pistons have landed. So postman has just dropped these off, and there's a big clue to what's inside the box. So let's see what we got. Now these are the ones that have been designed properly. Cool, look at them. So there you go, that's the new design piston. So that should be working properly now, giving slightly more, only a little bit more than the standard compression. And as you can see, that's the old original piston and that's the replacement. As you can see, they're pretty much the same design. Slight difference there. I think that's just to make use of the head design for the compression. So yeah, they're looking good. So I'm going to get the rings measured, make sure they're good, and then get one of these installed and get some measurements for the CC. So we're just at the point of sorting the rings out. You've got your oil rings, first and second compression rings. Now with JE you actually get some decent information. You get all the specs of the pistons, exactly what measurements they are. And you've got your handy diagrams as well, telling you what and how to put the rings. Now this is a bit this is the measurements I'm going for. It's 15th thou gap on the first ring, 16 the second, and the oil ring should be a 15th thou gap. It shows you what type of rings and where they should go, blah blah blah. It's quite self-explanatory. The hardest bit is the ring gap. Now the ring gap is very important. This is one done. If it will zoom in, probably not. You can see just the ring gap there, and that ring gap was 0.2. What was it? Yeah, 0.25 millimeters. It's hard, I work in millimeters, but those measurements are in inch. Yeah, that was 0.25 mil, and it's now gone up to 0.38, which is 16 thou, 15 thou. This ring has been in and out of this bore 80 odd times because it's so delicate to do. Because if you have that gap, you can see it a bit there, that gap needs to be straight and true to the bore. Obviously, when things get hot, metal expands. This ring, piston rings are mainly for, well, your compression. It's also, they're used for heat dissipation. That was terrible. To transfer heat from the piston ring to the bore. If these get too hot, they expand. They need that gap so the ring has freedom to move in the cylinder bore. If that gap is too small, everything expands, that closes up. You've now got no room for that piston ring to go anywhere. So it gets hotter and hot. There's even more heat getting up in that ring, hotter and hotter and hotter. As metal gets hot, it obviously turns to liquid, and at a certain point you'll end up that will seize itself in the bore with a piston, or lock it up and destroy a piston and everything. So it is very, very important to get those gaps spot on, and don't just go, right, that's a gap I need, and do all four of them. Do them per cylinder. So that's right there. I know I'm happy with that gap. That piston ring will now go straight on the piston, so I know that's done for number one. I'll then do the second ring and then oil rings, etc. And I'll do the same process for each cylinder. So I know all the gaps are perfect per cylinder. All I'm using tiny little needle file, or a better one than that. And you only want to be, ideally you want to be filing inwards, because what you don't want to do, you don't want to do is you don't want to file. If you're filing back and forward on the ring, you can end up chipping the outer, as you bring the file backwards, you can end up chipping the actual outer face of the ring. And it is a case of slowly catch your monkey, because they'll only be forking out. If you damage one ring, that's another set of rings you've got to buy. So just take your time if you're doing it, get it right first time, and check and check and check. So I'll crack on with all the rest of the rings. One thing I missed is when you're measuring the gap on the piston rings, make sure the piston ring is sat central in the bore. So I'm using a ruler, and the piston rings drop down 5 mil from the deck height, so it's even all the way around, so you know you're going to get an even gap. Because if you just put that straight till the gap ends line up, but the back end is not level, you're not going to get a true reading. So there we go. all 4 nice new properly designed pistons installed, looking pretty sexy. So first compression rings I had to file off small amount. When they're in the bore they're measuring 0.25 and I needed 0.38, so got them down to that. They're all in there. The second compression ring didn't need anything taken off and they were where we wanted them. And again with the oil scraper rings were sat on where we wanted them. So that is those pistons in. So now what I need to do is get the depth gauge to know exactly where true TDC is, so then we can work out the squish measurement, which will then work out what head gasket we're going to go with it. But I'm well happy with that. Nice to finally have some pistons in there that are actually going to make the car perform. So yeah, as you can see they're pretty much the same design. That front section is a touch lower and you've got this bit which is a touch higher. I think we worked out as about 10.1 to 1 compression ratio, which is a touch higher than standard, which is good. So yeah, well happy they're nicely in. When I've had the con rods reamed out, they're now allowing the pistons to sit perfectly in there and allowing the pistons should nicely float side to side. Obviously minimal movement, but beautiful. Happy with those. So yeah, on to the next bit.